Hey everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about the presuppositional apologetics methodology. Um, there's some misunderstandings on what it is. Presuppositionalism is pretty much it's taking the biblical worldview to its logical conclusion in all areas of thought. And we see in Acts 2:36, therefore let all the house of Israel know for certain that God has made him both Lord and Christ, this Jesus whom you crucified. Know for certain. We can have certainty. The regenerated person can have certainty that the Bible is God's word. In 1 John 5:13, these things I have written to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life, that you may know. We can have certainty. So based on that, based on the fact that we know as Christians, true regenerated Christians, we can have certainty. Everything we say in our defense for God's word, when we engage in debate, apologetics, everything we say is with certainty. We don't become like the fool and go on the grounds of the non-believer. When a non-believer would say something like, why don't we just lay aside our presuppositions and let's see where the evidence takes us? That's not an option biblically. I mean, Christians do that, but they are in error for doing that, because we never see Jesus or the apostles laying aside their presuppositions in debate, when debating against opposition. But as far as I wanted to read some stuff from a really great book, one of the best books on the presuppositional school of thought, Always Ready by Greg Bonson. This is fantastic. Just wanted to jump around here and there from here and just show you, just give you a taste of what's in here. I highly recommend getting this. I've said this before. I think one of the best debates that shows how presuppositional apologetics is done in action, if you go on YouTube, you type in epic debate on God's existence. It was Cy Ten Bruggencate, Jeff Durbin, and another Christian apologist against three atheists. Fantastic debate, one of my favorites. So yeah, let me just read a few things here. The contrast, the antithesis, the choice is clear. Either be set apart by God's truthful word, or be alienated from the life of God. Either have the mind of Christ, 1 Corinthians 2:16, or the vain mind of the Gentiles, Ephesians 4:17. Either bring every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, 2 Corinthians 10:5, or continue as enemies in your mind, Colossians 1:2. Those who follow the intellectual principle of neutrality and the epistemological method of unbelieving scholarship do not honor the sovereign lordship of God as they should. As a result, their reasoning is made vain, Romans 1:21. In Ephesians 4, as we have seen, Paul prohibits the Christian from following the vain mindset. Paul goes on to teach that the believer's thinking is diametrically contrary to the ignorant and darkened thinking of the Gentiles. But you did not learn Christ after this manner. Verse 20. While the Gentiles are ignorant, the truth is in Jesus. Verse 21. Unlike the Gentiles who are alienated from the life of God, the Christian has put away the old man and has been renewed in the spirit of your mind. Verses 22 to 23. The new man is distinctive in virtue of the holiness of truth. Verse 24. The Christian is completely different from the world when it comes to intellect and scholarship. He does not follow the neutral methods of unbelief, but by God's grace, he has new commitments, new presuppositions in his thinking. Therefore, the Christian who strives after neutrality in his thoughts is found actually to be endeavoring to efface the fact that he is a Christian. By denying his distinctive religious commitment, he is reduced to apostate thought patterns and absorbed into the world of unbelief, attempting to find a compromise between the demands of worldly neutrality, agnosticism, and the doctrines of Christ's word results in rejection of Christ's distinctive lordship by obliterating the great gulf between the thinking of the old man and that of the new man. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I like, we're in chapter 13. The central declaration and challenge of the Christian apologetics is expressed in Paul's rhetorical question, hath not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? 1 Corinthians 1:20. Critical attacks which are leveled against the Christian faith in the world of thought cannot be met by piecemeal replies and appeals to emotion. In the long run, the believer must respond to the onslaught of the unbeliever by attacking the unbeliever's position at its foundations. He must challenge the unbeliever's presuppositions, asking whether knowledge is even possible given the non-Christian assumptions and perspective. The Christian cannot forever be defensively constructing atomistic answers to the endless variety of unbelieving criticisms. He must take the offense and show the unbeliever that he has no intelligible place to stand, no consistent epistemology, no justification for meaningful discourse, predication, or argumentation. The pseudo-wisdom of the world must be reduced to foolishness, in which case none of the unbeliever's criticisms have any force. There's so much good stuff in here. I want to go to page, chapter 19. If the Christian is to have success in defending the faith, he must be prepared to call into question the competence of the unbeliever's thinking. Even if the believer does not have the impressive credentials of the educated scholarship possessed by the unbeliever, he is able to do this. The so-called educated quote, experts criticized our Lord with respect to his educational credentials, John 7:14-15. But Jesus countered by challenging the competence of his opponents. Because they refused to follow the will of God, they were in no position to judge. His teaching, verse 17-19, the Christian being indwelt by the Holy Spirit, John 14:17, and dwelling in Christ's word, John 8:31-32, knows the truth. All things pertaining to life are granted through a knowledge of God. 2 Peter 1:3, and thus those who refuse to acknowledge God and the truth about him will be led into futility and error in all fields of thought. Romans 1:18-21. Their unrighteousness blinds them, and accordingly the enlightened Christian can challenge his opponent's reasoning. Even Christianity's cultured and educated despisers can be presented an effective apologetic by any believer. God chose the foolish things of the world that he might put to shame them that are wise. 1 Corinthians 1:27. Apologetic success begins with this confidence. We, as presuppositionalists, we like to get to the heart of the matter, and we find that in Romans 1:18-32. People can make any excuse, jump onto any religion, philosophy to try to suppress the truth. But when it comes down to it, the reason why people reject the gospel, they reject the God of the Bible, is because they love their sins, and so they're suppressing the truth of God. They don't want to believe, they have a bias. So that's why they don't want to submit to God's word, and that's the heart of the matter. Romans 1:18-32. Let me jump to page. The attempt to take a neutral stance with respect to God's revelation then is immoral and unavoidably leads in principle to the disintegration of knowledge. Consequently, the Bible categorizes the unbeliever's thoughts as vain and foolish, and it requires the believer who is renewed in mind to be set apart from the world by submission to Christ's word of truth and the ultimate authority. The Christian then is rescued from the epistemic futility by presupposing God's word over all contrary claims. Where is 68? I go to 68. Yeah, I like it what it says here. Where am I? Consequently, the apologist needs to recognize that the debate between the believer and unbeliever is fundamentally a dispute or clash between two complete worldviews being ultimate commitments and assumptions which are contrary to each other. An unbeliever is not simply an unbeliever or at separate points. His antagonism is rooted in an overall philosophy, Colossians 2:8, which is according to the world's traditions. Thus, he is an enemy of God in his mind, Colossians 1:21, James 4:4, and uses his mind to nullify or obviate God's word, Mark 7:8-13, because he cannot perceive or know the things of the Spirit, 1 Corinthians 2:14. The unbeliever suppresses the truth, Romans 1:18, and exalts his reasoning against the knowledge of God. Now, we see all of us, obviously, we all have the same evidences, but we all interpret evidences differently in light of our worldviews, in light of our presuppositions. So there's been famous atheists who have said things like, I forget his name, a scientist, we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. there's been atheists who said once we go back and do a miracle, we're no longer doing science. So they have this commitment, this presuppositional commitment to naturalism, the atheist. So it's a matter of worldviews and interpreting. We all interpret the evidence through our worldviews. Our job as the presuppositionalist is to try to show the unbeliever that his worldview is in error, give the gospel. And let me go to 5. I went there. I went to 119:20. Everybody has what can be called a worldview, a perspective in terms of which they see everything and understand their perceptions and feelings. A worldview is a network of related presuppositions in terms of which every aspect of man's knowledge and awareness is interpreted. This worldview, as explained above, is not completely derived from human experience, nor can it be verified or refuted by the procedures of natural science. Not everybody reflects explicitly upon the content of his worldview or is consistent in maintaining it, but everybody has one nonetheless. A person's worldview clues him as to the nature, structure, and origin of reality. It tells him what are the limits of possibility. It involves a view of the nature, sources, and limits of human knowledge. It includes fundamental convictions about right or wrong. One's worldview says something about who man is, his place in the universe, and meaning of life. Worldviews determine our acceptance and understanding of events in human experience, and thus they play the crucial role in our interpreting of evidence or in disputes over conflicting fundamental beliefs. In an atheist worldview, in an atheist worldview, you really can't say that there are any moral absolutes, because if atheism is true, then we're just chemicals reacting to chemicals. We're just, as one person says, we're stardust. And so we have no basis to say anything is truly wrong or right morally. The famous atheist Richard Dawkins, he said there is no good or evil. So when atheists attack God on a moral level, they are borrowing from the biblical worldview in order to attack it, because all morality comes from God. These people, since everything comes from God, even logic, these people wouldn't be. They have to steal even logic to attack God, even though they're illogical. They're not using logic correctly. There was that famous debate with Greg Bonson, I think it was Gordon Stein, on the existence of God. It was a pretty classic one where they're in the cross-examination, and he gets Stein to say something like to the effect of there's nothing beyond. There's nothing there's nothing that exists outside of the material realm, or something of that effect. And as the cross-examination was going on, he asked the atheist. He said, what are the laws of logic? That's right. That's right. He said, are they material? And the atheist said, that's right. I'm sorry. He said the atheist admitted that the laws of logic are not material. And then Greg Bonson was being cross-examined, and Gordon Stein said to him, name something besides God that is immaterial. And he says, the laws of logic. And that was like one of those gotcha moments. It was pretty cool. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of what's in this book, Always Ready, by Greg Bonson. I highly recommend it. There's other good stuff out there, like Ultimate Proof of Creation by Dr. Jason Lisle. But I do believe that presuppositional apologetics is the most biblical way to do apologetics. We never lay aside our presuppositions, and you can use evidence. There's a difference between an evidentialist using evidence and a presuppositionalist using evidence. Usually, evidentialists are Arminians, and in evidential apologetics, that leaves room for someone to say something like, okay, let's just lay aside our presuppositions and see where the evidence takes us. Or I know one apologist, Arminian apologist, who's an evidentialist, and he said that his faith is based on evidence. And no, our faith is based on a supernatural work of God, not on evidence. So we can use evidence, but not as the basis for why we believe. We're not using evidence in that way. It's the evidentialist methodology of doing apologetics that would use it in that way, that saying that that's the basis for why you believe, or that sort of thing. So a presuppositionalist isn't really going to I never seen a presuppositionalist really place emphasis on evidences, but when a presuppositionalist mentions evidences, he applies it correctly, because our apologetic methodology should flow from our theology. And so when we apply evidences, when we mention evidences, we don't do it in a way where we think that that this is the basis for why we believe. No. We'll mention evidences. I mean, Romans 1 talks about all creation is enough evidence to make the non-believer have no excuse on Judgment Day, when that person is to be judged. So I just wanted to give people just a little bit of taste of that. 1 Peter 3:15 commands Christians to always be ready to give a defense for what we believe. And there's good books out there. Like I said, Ultimate Proof of Creation, it's over there, by Dr. Jason Lisle, Lisle, which I would highly recommend. Dr. James White's ministry, really, really good. Answers in Genesis, answersgenesis.org. They have a lot of free articles there. So that's some good sources for you to get into, to learn how to give a defense for the Bible.